In my 55 years, I've recognized a lot of lenses that I grew up with, thinking that that's just the way the world is. And now I'm realizing that it's a lens that shaded and colored the way that I see the world and the way that I act. So I thought maybe today we could spend some time talking about the lenses that we grew up thinking were the real world that we're now seeing through more clearly that don't serve us anymore. I'll give you one, this idea that everybody needs to be ranked and that every interaction tends to be opponents and a competition instead of a collaboration. So, just as an example, sports competitions. As popular as sports are, it's about ranking people and who's going to be number one and who's going to win that game and who's the best player and who's going to get that trophy. We rank people based on their money. We rank people based on their education, their job title. We rank people based on their frequent flyer status. I mean, something that was created by a marketing department somewhere has led to this intense competition about who's flown more, who's spent more time away from their family and their dogs and their kitchen, who's flown more, and it racked up all these miles for what? Like, what value does that bring you? But there's such pride in where people are with their airline status. So there's this idea of competition. And I know you were talking earlier about people in a relationship, not just romantic relationship, but any two people who view each other as opponents. That's not necessarily the way that you have to interact.
I've had so many relationships like this where I approached a problem from a collaborative standpoint. Like I wanted to figure out what's the problem, like, and I've said this multiple times to multiple people. How about if we put the problem over here and you and I stand over here and figure out how to solve the problem? But what ends up happening when you're dealing with people whose lens is competition, all they ever see is the problem in the middle and then you on either side. And let's see who can get the problem solved their way better, like a tug of war. And it's just exhausting, but also it's damaging if you don't realize that the people that you're in those relationships with are looking at it through a competitive lens. And the very fact that you brought up sports first just tells me that this is not just a couple of people issue. Like the world is mired in this competition mindset.
My first job out of undergrad, I worked at an academic research lab in biology, and it was a gigantic lab. We had like 10 or 15 postdocs, which for academic labs is a lot of people. And the reason that the principal investigator hired that many postdocs is that he ended up giving many of them the same project to work on, not collaboratively, but they were pitted against each other. And yes, that might bring out the best in people or the fastest in people because they were competing with other people for their career and their lives in that industry. So maybe it was good for the research, but it was terrible for their careers. It's like whoever got the paper first, the other people were essentially put back in their career by 3 or 4 years. In an academia, that's a lifetime.
I had a boss one time that absolutely could not stand when I succeeded at something. And so every time I succeeded at something, he was mad and he would find some reason to be mad at me or come and chew me out for something or yell. It was there was a lot of yelling. There was a lot of yelling. But him yelling at me when I'm coming at it from a collaborative mindset, I was thinking I wasn't succeeding. Otherwise, why would he be yelling at me? And so what it did was it made me work harder and it made me do better. And then I succeeded more and then I got in trouble even more. So that was probably one of the most damaging psychologically. Like if I were to go into a workplace now, I would be able to spot the narcissists like this. And I just called it out. It's narcissism is one of the things. Not all people who like competition are narcissists. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that my narcissist couldn't stand when I succeeded.
The manager-employee relationship is quite complex. And I feel like I shed that lens a long time ago that it's a competitive relationship. So when I managed lots and lots of people, I would actually turn the org chart upside down and then put me at the bottom. As the leader, I would put me at the bottom because the people who are at the top were the frontline people doing all the work and they're coming in the late nights and they're trying to get their career going. And those were the people that needed all of our support, all of ours. So that was my idea back then. But a manager and employee who approached each other, either way, approaching the other as a competitor, that's not going to be a good collaboration. That team is not going to thrive and succeed.
No, not at all. And when you're talking about a boss and an employee, there's a power differential. So one of those people is always going to come out on top, and one of those people is always going to get down.
So the same thing can happen in romantic relationships or even family relationships. That within a family or a romantic relationship, if we see each other as competitors, then we don't really get to attack the problem, we attack each other. So I always say to my kids, we're not doing this, we're doing this against the problem. So same thing you
Yeah.
just did. So what are some of the consequences of approaching your romantic partner as a competitor instead of a collaborator?
You're never on the same team. And isn't that what you want in a partner? Is to be on the same team? I mean, to me that's just a huge consequence is that you then are always alone because you don't have the partner who's in it with you. I will also say that being in a relationship that was competitive rather than collaborative also meant that all of my successes were met with belittling and diminishment because the partner that I had couldn't stand to see me shine. And so they did what they could to bring me down. But as a collaborator, my goal always was to bring both of us up. I was always on the search for how do we both succeed in this? How do we both become better? How do we both thrive and shine? And as long as I'm getting beat down, I can't bring either one of us up by myself.
In our 50s now, I feel like we can certainly shed that lens. Here's another lens that doesn't work for me anymore, and I think I've heard you commenting on this as well, this lens that there is in the world right and wrong, good guys, bad guys. And that's getting very complicated,
Yes.
especially in this day and age, as we start to look at ideologies that aren't quite clear. So I sometimes don't know who's the good guy.
Yeah, I that's absolutely right. This very binary thinking of it's either good or it's bad, as a child, being raised like that made life seem simpler. Because if I as long as I knew what the good things were and I followed through on the good things, then my life was going to be okay. And if I stumbled into a bad thing, I could always undo it, with an apology or an amend or recompense. But the older that I got and the more I recognized how much messy is in between the binary poles, actually, the more colorful the world got for me. And it's more complex and more complicated, but the binary thinking is really, really damaging. Like you said, trying to determine who's the good guys and who's the bad guys. So politically, I definitely have a leaning. And if you've listened to even 5 seconds of anything that we've ever recorded, you're going to know which way I lean. And I used to believe that the other political party were the bad guys and my political party were the good guys. And over the past year, it has become increasingly clear that there's a whole lot of bad guys up at the top on both sides of the political spectrum. And the thing that I thought divided the line isn't the political party. And now that it's not the political party that's the dividing line, the line has become like a mush. Like there's not a line anymore where I can just point to the bad guys and point to the good guys. Now it's just a whole bunch of people who have varying degrees of doing really good work for their constituents and doing a lot that harms their constituents in favor of enriching themselves. And so it's just this big, messy middle. But given both, I would rather live in a world where I have the capacity to look through a lens that allows for the messy.
I don't really believe that there are good guys and bad guys. I really don't. I feel like there's good decisions, good behavior, good intentions, bad intentions. And within every human being, there's both of all of those. And it's just a matter of whether the intention, the behavior, the decisions are aiming to try to do better every time, or whether they're just self-serving and heartless. So to me, that's the line.
I'm finding that it's not just identifying good people and bad people that's problematic. it's also problematic to just have a very defined set of good behaviors and bad behaviors. Because a lot of the behaviors that I was raised to think were good behaviors, I now see were incredibly harmful. They served a purpose when I learned them. But now, if I were to continue to live as though those are ideals that I should live up to, it's more harmful to me than helpful. So then, when we're looking at the entire world and judging the behaviors of people, which let's just be honest, we all do, we are all judging behaviors constantly. It's very hard then to look at a behavior and say that's right and that's wrong, because it might be what's wrong for me might be right for someone else. And it's been really difficult, especially within the last year, with the misinformation that has ramped up and AI becoming a thing now. I'm starting to lose confidence in my own ability to discern even what's right for me and what's wrong for me. And I'm really a lot of times finding myself having to say, okay, hold on, gut check. Okay, does this feel right? Does this not? And run it through all my filters. Um, because it's getting much easier nowadays to just be like, ah, fuck it, nothing's right. Everything's wrong.
If you're talking about not knowing what's right and wrong for yourself, how do you define right and wrong? Are you talking about the morality? Are you talking about the consequences to other people? Or are you talking about true, the angelic moral good? I mean, how are you defining right and wrong for yourself?
That's exactly the problem, is that we have different ways of measuring right and wrong, which is why you can't do a right and wrong. So for me, my bottom line is harm. If something that I'm doing is more harmful than helpful, then that's not right for me. But if something that I'm doing is more useful, helpful, uplifting than it is harmful, then that's right for me.
So as we become adults, that complexity increases because when we're little, we have certain things that we're told are right and wrong. Purity, humility, respecting authority. We can talk about all of those. But as we get older, those things become much more complicated and nuanced, and there is intention behind it, and there is sometimes malintent behind those things, even for ourselves. And so we really have to figure out not just what is right and wrong. I mean, not just whether you want to choose right or wrong, but what does that mean for you in that context?
Let's take some of those: humility, purity, some of the things that we were taught as children are really good qualities to have. They served us back then, that it helped to guide us in a direction that now as an adult I can say is right for me. But there came a time in life when those qualities took on a completely different meaning because I was no longer a child. And to hang on to the idea that I had to continue to be those things as a woman, a fully grown ass woman, it was incredibly harmful for me to try to maintain the ideals of a 6-year-old little girl.
So talk about how purity and humility affected you as an adult.
Both of those things were, among many others, were things that we were taught are good, pure Christian Christian things to be. And the problem is that everything that fell outside of that felt like not just a betrayal to myself, but a betrayal to God. And anything that's a betrayal to God is also a betrayal to the world. Let's take humility, for example. As a child, humility serves us well because we come out of the womb the center of the universe. And as we age, we have to learn that we are not, in fact, the center of the universe. And humility is a quality that helps us to keep that overconfidence in check. But as a woman in this culture, all that humility does for me now is keep me silent. It keeps me quiet. It keeps me from living into my full awesomeness. It keeps me from being extra because we don't want women living out in the world that are loud and bossy and not humble and prideful and are not pure, and all of those things just silence my voice. They just kept me small, and I don't want to be small anymore. That smallness was incredibly harmful to hold on to it as a woman. And I did a lot of years of therapy to move from like, but humility is in the good list, to a place where I can have a healthy dose of humility in a situation where it's appropriate, but that doesn't mean that I have to be small all the time.
Well, let's go back to your baseline of harm. If you are humble, who is the, let's be honest, who's the one person who's going to be harmed the most?
And if we are not humble, who's getting harmed?
Nobody is getting harmed. I think there are entitlements that are being challenged, but that's not harm.
No, it's not harm. And that's why I love that you wanted to talk about this lenses through which we see the world, because those lenses no longer serve us if they are harming us, but to not do them is harming no one.
Yes.
Then why are we still doing that?
Because
why are we still allowing ourselves to be harmed by our own lenses?
We're still being told that letting go of these lenses harms others when that's not true. There's harm being claimed. The internet has brought on this pseudo anonymity that people can feel they can say anything they want on the internet. And there's someone that I follow who takes these gorgeous pictures of beautiful women, movie stars, whatever, and then they post the comments about that movie star. Oh, they've put on a lot of weight. Oh, you need a little bit of sausage casing there, right? And it's just so sickening. But then they show the portrait picture of the person who said that. And it exposes this. You're not anonymous. You're saying these hateful, terrible things about someone who's purposefully in the public eye, and it really is not showing the flaws that you're claiming. So all that's doing is exposing people who have these deep insecurities about themselves and are projecting that on somebody else, thinking that they're anonymous. So this idea of humility of the public figures, they're not being humble. They don't need to be humble. It's hurting nobody.
No, and that might be a place where maybe the people that are making those comments never grew up past the point where they were the center of the universe. Maybe their own insecurities, because those are central to them, means that they need to be central to everybody else too. And I need to tell you and the whole entire world my perspective on this. When you're like, really? Did you fact check any of that? Or is it just,
The lens of being the center of the universe and needing to be the center of the universe after a certain age, that's got to go. That's got to go across society. We've got to live together. Let's talk about something that you touched on, and that is some of the things that we were brought up thinking is right and wrong, that it was always right to respect authority. And that authority was ill-defined as people who have money, people who have political power, people who are high in the church, people who are older than we are, men. This is who we taught had authority without really our permission or understanding of why that authority needed to be respected, and yet those were the people that needed to be respected and said yes to. Respect meant obeying.
This is hugely problematic, and this is not a lens that I think we ever should be teaching little girls in particular, or little boys for that matter. We should not be teaching a lens where you should say yes to anybody who is in any kind of power above you, whether that power is a position or money or size or age. We need to be teaching our kids that it is actually really good and healthy to say, yeah, no, no, that doesn't feel right. It's not okay with me. So this brings me to, in rape culture, a lot of the reasons why women weren't believed up until very recently about their rapes is because when they would describe being raped, too many of them, which is probably most of us, weren't screaming and running away. That's how we respond if you're in a movie, right? And then there might be some women who have enough history of whatever that is inside them that fight and run, fight and scream and run. Most of us were conditioned not to scream and run and make a fuss or make a scene. So if we're being raped, we're not making a scene. Most of us in those scenarios just shut down.
It's
You do what you got
impolite.
to do to get through the minute.
It's impolite.
It's impolite. Yes, it's impolite. And then by the time you figure out that your politeness is actually just turned to danger, it's too late. It's infuriating. So women in the 90s and in the early 2000s, when they'd be put on stands, all they had to do was like, well, why didn't you scream and fight? And they'd be like, I just didn't. And that was by itself a defense that it was consent.
But it starts so early in so many seemingly innocuous ways. When we were growing up, oh, give Aunt so-and-so a kiss, give them a hug.
Mm.
But my daughter was born in 2005. I never required her to touch, hug, kiss any of my friends or relatives.
Me neither. Because we grew up in a generation where you did do that, and most of us have been sexually harassed or abused or raped.
By those people
For
in
exactly
authority.
that reason. By the people in authority.
By the people in authority, yeah.
So who are the people that think that we should continue to be pure and humble and respect authority?
The people who have self-claimed authority based on money, power, age, gender, political power, church power, seniority. The people who are in power don't want to give it up. Okay. This brings me right back, though, to the why are we ranking people? Why are we saying you have power over me because you claim power? Nobody should really have power over other people in that way.
This is the problem that I have with capitalism and corporate America, is that we've set up a system where you are in a hierarchy, and if the person above you on the hierarchical scale doesn't like you, they have the ability to ruin you. If they fire you and you needed that job to feed your children, that could ruin you. So all we're doing is creating worker bees with no autonomy, with ultimate respect for authority, because you have to, or else suffer the consequences. So I'm just like, get me on a tangent about corporate America.
Is there a way to move forward as a society without such strict hierarchy? I know we need some hierarchy, like you're a better farmer than I am, and I'm a better car mechanic, and so we're going to do those things. But is there a way to not have such strict hierarchy that depends on power and the people in power maintaining that power?
Let's look at, as an example, in the Native American culture, they have spiritual leaders who are given positions of honor. They have not gotten those positions by abusing the people below them. They were given the honor because the people agreed amongst themselves that that person had earned the right to that respect and that honor. I think that one of the problems that we have is that we give power, we give honor and respect to the people who have perceived power over us, not because they've earned it by any efforts of being good for the community. The only way that people have that kind of honor and respect is if the community agrees to it. So in our culture, we as a community have agreed that the people with money, the people with like positions of power in all of the institutional spheres, the finance, politics, entertainment, education, all of those arenas, we've agreed that people who are in those positions of power and people who have a lot of money and people who are famous are the people that we give honor and respect to. And we've agreed upon this. And I think the core of it has to come down to we have to get to a place where we no longer abide by that.
I feel like just the very fact that we have in our political system people who campaign to get those jobs, I feel like that is the biggest symptom of us moving so far away from this idealized version of a democracy post British monarchy in the US was supposed to be that the people who were best in those political positions would get those political positions, not the one who campaigned the best or the one who so fervently wanted that role, he wanted that power, and they're going to fight in the dirt to get that power. No, you want the guy who doesn't want that job. The guy who's going to be the woman who's going to be very good at it, who's going to focus on the community, not on their own power. But right now, our system is completely set up on campaigning and fighting, honestly, in the dirt for those positions of power. That's not who we want in charge. We want the people who are going to be good at it and think beyond themselves. And our political system is set up for people who take the power because they think of themselves first, largely.
It's so ingrained in our system to do that that we have to have a massive overhaul of existential thought in order for us to stop venerating the people who have power because they are vicious enough to go get it.
That's who we elect, is people who are vicious enough to campaign in a dirty way and go grab that power because they want that power, not because they want to do good things with it. We're separated from that. We need to vote in people who don't want that job. It should be a requirement to be a politician to not want to be a politician.
But the people who don't want it aren't going to go out there and get it because they don't want it. The people who actually are in it for the betterment of the community are not going to be willing to do the things that it takes to get there. In the way that we've set this up now, you have to be dirty and crooked to get to those positions of power, not just in politics, but in all of those arenas.
This is why the system needs to be overhauled. As easy as that'll be. The lens that I'm really getting rid of is to see value in other people based on surface attributes. Beauty, being thin, being fit, being rich. So you see all these TikToks from men who say, I want this and this and this and this out of a woman. And it's their surface stuff. It's the color of their hair. It's their height. It's their money. It's not about their personality and their interests and their values. It really is surface stuff. And then as women, we tend to go fight to have those things over other women. But that's competition that we don't need. And that is not looking past the surface into what value is in a human being.
And I think that we have created a society where the first thing that we see about a person is their beauty or lack of beauty. The second thing that we judge about a person when we're looking them up and down is their money, which you can tell by how they carry themselves, what they're dressed as, what kinds of clothing they have, all of those things.
It would be great if we could either A, immediately see past people's surface stuff and really get to know them, or B, be willing to get past the surface stuff and get to know people before we make a judgment about them. Now, that's not human nature, but wouldn't that be lovely?
That would be lovely. That would be so lovely. It's very hard to do.
Right.
I know what's kind of rolling around in my head as we're talking about this is, how do I make a judgment about a person?
Do you have any opinions about what you're hearing? We would love to hear from you. Write something in the comments. We want to know.
I know what's kind of rolling around in my head as we're talking about this is, how do I make a judgment about a person? And for me, it's not necessarily on beauty or youth or, you know, the caliber of their clothing. For me, I judge based upon their mannerisms that I maybe don't even fully recognize in the moment. So I go on vibes, and what I've come to recognize is that the vibes that I get off of people have everything to do with their facial expressions. Is it genuine, or is this a put on? Their body language. Are they trying to be dominant over me or not? And all of those little things I put together into this package of who I think a person is. And then I make a judgment based on vibes.
Can I make a confession? I almost dismissed a friend because he didn't know who Aaron Parnas was. Like that litmus test. That's my litmus test. If someone's not on TikTok or Blue Sky or whatever, okay. I was able to get over that, but that was my initial no.
I guess we kind of have to judge in order to determine which people are worthy of our time investment, because we don't have unlimited time and we don't have unlimited capacity to offer of ourselves. So I think we do kind of have to do a little bit of judgment about, or discernment. That's probably a better word. We do have to do some discernment to determine which people we want to let into our sphere of influence and not. But I think that you're absolutely spot on about us having to do the work of making sure that a person's beauty, age, and wealth are not the determining factors for whether or not those people are deserving of our time and attention.
I don't think it takes long to get past those and figure out some things that are deeper values to us, as long as we understand what they are in ourselves, to be honest.
Say more.
I was just thinking, okay, you align with my values, but do I know my own values? So I think me personally, yes, I'm pretty clear on my own values, my own deal breakers. But maybe someone who hasn't given it a lot of thought, we're asking them to discern other people's values, whether it aligns with one's own, without having really evaluated their own. I think that's the first step. A lot of young people perhaps haven't gotten there yet.
And I do think that there is some value in welcoming people into our sphere of influence who maybe are not who we would typically welcome into our sphere of influence, and then have a willingness to learn and listen from those people. That's a deliberate effort. That takes some work. That's not something that's going to come natural to most of us.
I have to say, some of my favorite things on the planet have been weird situations that I've gotten myself into where I would only ever run into that person in this circumstance. Jury duty. I loved jury duty pools because I would run into people who I would never have crossed paths with in any other life. I worked for Habitat for Humanity. Again, just this mishmash of people that I would have run into. And I love putting myself in those situations where I can at least interact for that brief period of time with people who typically would never be in my sphere.
I found those in the AA groups. Man, one AA group to another. And you can walk into those anytime you want. And that is a mishmash of people, let me tell you what.
Gotta love a mishmash of people. There's another lens that I've been trying to get rid of, and it's not as clear baked in my mind, but it's this idea of always needing to be right and to have people understand that one is right. So I'm not necessarily talking about myself, but I have noticed myself in the last year or two, if I see someone saying something incorrectly, I don't always correct them anymore. And I wasn't correcting people out of ego or because I needed to be right, but because I'm a scientist and the truth to me is everything. So I would just correct them. And lately I've decided I don't need to do that unless their safety is at risk. I don't need to do that. One example, there's an adorable series of videos going around of people sitting in a dog shelter and the dog gets to choose the human, which is a fantastic idea. It's so sweet, except for the consequence of a human who's not chosen. That's kind of sad. But people around me love this video and it's AI. But I'm not going to go tell them that. Who cares? I don't need to go ruin this bubble for them. So I just let it go.
I also have found that I used to need to also place down on the table facts and the truth. And for me, that's an ADHD response. Like my brain had to have everything sorted in such a way. And so if you said something that I thought wasn't accurate, I needed to set that straight before we could continue on, because otherwise I'd be stuck there. My brain was stuck on that inaccuracy. But I've reframed it for myself over the past couple of years, where when I'm in those conversations now, I'm taking a backseat more to driving the conversation and which direction it's going to go, and listening more and learning more. And if somebody is saying something that I know to be factually inaccurate, it actually makes me wonder what makes them tick. You know, like what's going on in their head that's making them think this. And I come at it with much more curiosity than I used to. It used to just be aggravating. And now it just makes me curious, and it makes me want to get to know other people more. And I think some of that for me came from no longer needing to be seen as to see other people. I used to feel so invisible that I had to work so hard to make my voice heard and to be seen in a group that now I just don't need that anymore. And I'm having a whole lot more fun looking at other people and listening to their perspective than I am at laying down what I think they should be thinking and believing.
I completely agree with you. It's like a bunch of flies in the room that are misinformation or wrong facts. And I would, in the past, have to go get all those flies and like pound them out. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true. Just because it felt like people were just making mistakes. And now watching people, watching where that fly lands, or watching somebody else say, oh, you know what? I question that fly. I don't think that's true. And then coming to their own realization because they've gone through this critical thinking pathway. To me, that's so much more satisfying and enjoyable. And it makes me feel more connected to people than just crushing those flies myself. Yeah, I think especially with my kids, there are so many times that I don't correct my son because he's making his way in the world, and I'm not always going to be there to say, here's the truth, here's the truth. And maybe my truth isn't even his truth. And so I'm allowing him to just say these things that I completely disagree with or that I know are not true. And I'll say, oh, that's interesting. What makes you think that? Or where did you learn that? Talk about it like that instead of saying that's not true, which doesn't help anybody.
No, and I do think it's a byproduct of being a mom in this culture, and is that for decades, sometimes we're in a mode of everything's a teachable moment.
Right. Right.
And the only way you do that is by spotting all of the things that aren't correct and correcting it, course correcting while you still can. And then when, now that we have young adults, it's pretty liberating not to have to always be looking for the things that are wrong.
Like if you're on that roof and you jump off with an umbrella, you're going to get hurt. That's the kind of truth I would correct. But, my son at 12,
Yeah.
who's out in the world learning about stuff, I think this is his time to go learn how to figure stuff out safely. It is liberating. And I think it's age related. And I think it's because I'm an older mom. It's easier for me to do that. Isn't it interesting how we both sort of had our first round of kids and our second round of kids. My kids are 8 years apart, so I kind of feel like I did one, and then the second one I knew a lot more than I would have if they were 18 months apart or 2 years apart. And same with you, your third and your fourth were 16, 17 years apart.
With that first round of kids, like I was still learning how to be a mom at the same time as they were growing up and learning how to be little humans.
Right.
And so we were all learning at the same time. And now that I've got the mom thing down pretty well, for the most part, I think I've got the mom thing down pretty well. So now having another little guy with the experience and the patience that I have now that I didn't have and couldn't have had the first time round, it's a completely different experience parenting this time round. Not better or worse, just very different.
The one aspect of being right is correcting people when you think they've said something wrong. Another aspect of being right that really annoys me, and I think is a consequence of social media right now, is that if a misinformation slash lie is repeated loudly, confidently, over and over and over again, many, many people will believe that it's true. And social media allows that to happen with this sort of echo chamber of, I'm going to say something completely factually incorrect. And if I say it with enough confidence with a straight face, people will believe me and repeat it. And this really bothers me, that people can just so confidently say a thing that's not true. Either they know it's not true, or they're not willing to look into whether it's true, or it's just something that serves them in the moment. And other people will just buy it without thinking about it. This really, I struggle with this.
I struggle with this too, and it particularly on social media and news outlets. What I find is, because I am a critical thinker and because I am always doing gut checks about the things that I think I know, because I don't know everything, and I'm wrong a lot. And so every time I get some piece of information that doesn't seem right to me, I do a gut check. I'm like, does that line up with the experience that I've had of 57 years on the planet? Or is that like, yeah, no, that doesn't make any sense at all. However, the conviction with which people are telling these lies and or mistruths or untruths or lies makes me question my own gut check. It makes me a lot of times think, am I the crazy one? Like, am I in the wrong here? Because you and I have trained ourselves to be critical thinkers. And we hang out with other people who are critical thinkers. And so when something comes along that doesn't match that, my first reaction is going to be, well, let me do a check on that. And to not trust my own gut for me has been the most devastating part of the misinformation age.
As uncomfortable as that is, the fact that you don't trust your gut as much is why you're going to be right more often, because you're going to go check. You're going to go ask yourself, I'm not just going to believe what I believe. I'm going to go look it up. I'm going to go look at multiple sources. I'm going to look at sources that I believe in. I'm going to go look at sources that don't agree with me and come to a conclusion that way. And that's the very fact that you question your own gut is what makes you more, probably a little more likely to be closer to the truth.
I hope so. What's bothersome to you?
That people can say something with a straight face and then wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and say, you lied so blatantly, and I'm okay with that. I don't know how that would feel. Like Pam Bondi is so assertive that this is the most transparent presidency ever, and I can name 5 things just off the top of my head that demonstrate without a doubt that this is not a transparent regime. So how does she reconcile saying something so blatantly, obviously, provably false, and then go home and sleep at night and wake up in the morning saying, I did say that, and I know that it wasn't true. She knows it wasn't true. That kind of discomfort, I mean, that what that would do to my own stomach if I did that, I wouldn't be able to eat well, I wouldn't be able to sleep well. And these are things that politicians in our regime right now are doing daily and openly, and I feel sick to my stomach for them. Like how do they eat well?
I have to chalk those people up to just psychopathy. Like there's no other way for me to come at it from a perspective of any kind of normal human behavior. Like it's not normal to behave in ways that are that devastatingly harmful to so many people and not be affected by it. It's just not normal. So I just have to look at it and just go like those people are broken.
That makes me sad.
One of the lenses that I finally let go of is having to do things because I thought other people thought that I should. And I just don't have to do that anymore because now I do what I feel like I should do. And sometimes it's really uncomfortable because there might be a bunch of people who think that I should this and I should that and I blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So, one of the things for me is going to church. I grew up in the church. I was going to church before I was born, literally. I've been a church person my entire life. I was so much a church person that I actually went to the seminary, got myself ordained, became a pastor, and was pastor in 2 churches for a total of 12 years. When I left ministry, I did a search for what kind of church I would want to belong to. And as the search went on, I recognized more and more that I don't want to belong to a church. I don't want to even go to a church. Having been raised in church culture, though, not going to church is a huge deal. It's a big, big deal. So I had to learn to let go of other people's expectations that I was going to find a church. And also recognize that those other people don't really exist. There really weren't people pressuring me to this and that and the other. So part of it is just learning to let go of what other people think I should do. And part of it is learning to recognize that a lot of the things that I think other people are pressuring me to do, it's really just my own pressure I'm putting on myself. There's really no other people. So if there were people who were thinking that I should go to church, that's a them problem, not a me problem. And for the instances where it's things that I feel like I should do because someone out there is going to judge me if I don't, I have to recognize that's just me putting pressure on myself for no reason.
Well, it's conditioning. It's not no reason. So similarly, we were raised that if there was a crappy job to be done, we had to step out and do that crappy job. And most of my life, I did do that. And it makes me feel good to a degree because then no one else has to do it. But also, I don't have a lot of time right now to do all those crappy jobs. So I am much more selective about which crappy job I volunteer for these days. There are some things that I love to do that people ask me to do. DJing for baseball. I love DJing for baseball, stuff like that. I'll do those things because I love to. But those crappy jobs, I don't do them as much.
And the thing is that some of the crappy jobs that we think are crappy jobs, other people love doing those jobs.
I can't imagine, but you're probably right.
I mean, I'm not talking about like Mike Rose dirty jobs. Although even those jobs, probably there were people who loved doing those jobs. I don't know why we yeah, that's a stupid one.
I'm letting that
That's a
go.
stupid one from childhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
That one, and that you have to always do the ickiest stuff first. Eat the frog first. Well, sometimes if I don't eat the frog first, I end up not even needing to eat it at all because eventually it just takes care of itself, right? Like, so some of the crappy things that are on my to-do list, if I ignore some of them long enough, sometimes they just sort themselves out.
You're
So I
absolutely.
don't always do the icky stuff first.
So my recollection of the frog one, yes, you eat the ugliest toad first. My recollection was that the saying was also, if you have to eat an elephant, start with the butt, because then the rest of it's going to be easy. But I'm not eating the whole elephant. So many of these analogies that we grew up with in our society and in our family, we can just let go. Just as the saying of dark is the absence of light and evil is the absence of good, things like that. I think it's much more complicated. The people that we were asking questions of, they would always come back to these phrases. And I think they're just not, they don't hold up over time.
I swear to God, if I hear one more person trying to define insanity,
By hitting
I
your
will
head against
lose
a
my
brick
shit.
wall.
No, it's doing the same thing over and over again without expecting different results. Yes, we all get it now. Y'all, stop putting it in your books. Stop putting it in your YouTubes. All right, enough with it. Just shut it. I don't want to hear that any ever again. We get it.
Well, that itself is not completely accurate either. Circumstances change, the environment changed, context changes, our intent changes. So doing the same thing over and over again might actually get you results.
So I have a question for you. What is one lens that you have created for yourself as an adult, knowing that you want to look at the world like that?
So I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and the lens that I've created and put on right now, and maybe it's actually taking off a lens, is that I don't am not going to be successful ever at making everybody like me. So I thought today, you know what? I'm going to go out on LinkedIn because I'm doing a lot of marketing on LinkedIn. I'm going to go out on LinkedIn and try to get 5 people to disconnect from me because I'm being too annoying. And I don't think that's ever going to happen, but I don't need everybody to like me. I cannot get everybody to like me. So I'm letting that one go, or I'm putting on a lens of I'm going to be authentic. And if people don't like me, then I have to let that go.
Mine is also tangentially an authenticity lens, and that is that other people do not care about me as much as I think that they do. And I don't mean that they don't love me, that there are no people that love me. What I'm saying is, when I'm out in the world feeling being judged by all of these people for what I'm wearing or how I look or, what car I drive in, the people don't care. So the lens that I now look through is that other people are probably also walking through the world feeling like everyone's judging them. And if you're walking through the world and you think everybody else in the world is worried about what you think of them, that gives me a lot of power when I walk through the world. And I know that I can do that responsibly because I don't judge people the way that I once did based on looks or, okay. If you smell bad, I will judge you. I'm just saying, I cannot have a conversation with you if you smell bad. I'm just saying this. Okay, it's out there. But other people just don't care that much about the thing. So it makes my life so much easier when I'm realizing that all of the hours and hours and hours that I've spent stewing about how I'm going to present to the world is kind of pointless. Coming soon on Super Random Things with those sisters.
This morning, I was talking to 2 female friends of mine, people I feel very close to. One of them was saying that she doesn't like wearing shorts because she has varicose veins or cellulite or something like that. And we got around to talking about who was going to look and make fun of the varicose veins. And it ended up, we thought that maybe women were the ones who were looking at the varicose veins and saying, you're too old, in her 40s, to be wearing shorts. We came around in the conversation to who doesn't have cellulite on their legs, and who doesn't have cellulite are little girls who are under 15 years old. So why are we as grown women trying to look like little girls? And of course the answer is because we were trained that we all should be prettier by looking like younger and younger girls. And it's just ick. It's not right.
I think I want to start with why that is, though. I think
Sure.
it's important to name it and call it out. It has everything to do with what other people told me and what the culture told me when I was young, in such a formative age that it's very difficult to disentangle myself from the messages that my worth is tied to my beauty, my physical beauty, my outward beauty. There was a period of time, I think in the 80s, where being like anorexic stick thin was in fashion. Looking like a little boy was in fashion. And so you couldn't see models that had any curves or fat on them at all. But I've had so many people in my lifetime comment on mostly on my weight, mostly on my weight. Almost all of it has been on my weight.
Will comment on your body?
Oh God, all the time. All the time. As a kid, less so now. I think that my age gives me a little bit of invisibility in the world right now. But I remember one time I was walking with a friend in Southern California. It was a beautiful day. We both were wearing shorts and we were walking up the hill, and a car full of teenagers drove by and said something to me about my butt hanging out or something. And it clearly wasn't for my friend because my friend was very, very thin. And it just like shut me down in that moment. And I was so body dysmorphized at the time that my best friend and I both took a photograph for our local newspaper that was to highlight the upcoming musical. I looked at that photograph and was disgusted at how fat I was compared to my friend. 20, 30 years goes by. Now I look at the photograph, and with an objective view, we were exactly the same size. But I couldn't see it. All I could see was the fat because I was constantly getting these messages of, you have to be thinner, you have to be thinner, you have to be thinner. And so even now, as much as I like to say, I don't give a fuck about what people think, and in a lot of ways, that's really, really true. I don't give a what people think. But I have internalized the needing to be thin enough that when I'm not at a weight that I'm comfortable with, it makes me uncomfortable, it makes me unhappy.
Hey, Aslu, do you like your mom's content?
I do. Do you like it, Kiwi?
I really do. I like my mom's content.
It's
Hey,
amazing.
like and subscribe, please.
Like and subscribe.